Hello everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of the Examiner Gamer Podcast. I am your host, as always, Tristan, and I am joined by Shay.
Hello!
He is an episode early, as we teased before. He should be back in 9, but you know what? Maybe we should change this up more often where it's on and off, whatever. Just so that the voices are in a more rotation, so I give Lauren a break, then Shay a break, and then etc. Anyway, today is a very news and game idea-centric episode because there's not a lot of releases for video games. Since the last episode, I can now talk about Shovel Knight again. I originally played it on the 3DS, loved it, one of my favorite games from last year, and it's still great on the PS4 and Vita and PS3. The inclusion of the Kratos is pretty cool. I don't want to spoil how you get it, but you fight Kratos, and then you may or may not get some kind of power that changes up gameplay in a pretty significant way.
Wait, Kratos from God of War?
Yeah.
Oh.
But
not Kratos from Tales of.
No, that'd be amazing, actually.
I am Kratos!
And then, the Xbox One version included the Battletoads, and I looked. It's actually a lot more extensive. I'm really jealous, actually, of Microsoft, because not only do you get to fight all 3 Battletoads, but you actually get to go through, like, a huge, like, gauntlet of, like, a level. It's a level boss, and there's, like, 3 stages to it while you do, like, the level and you fight the bosses, and it's really cool. Plus, you get, like, power-ups, and this one is just, like, you fight Kratos, and then you get, like, a weird armor thing that is pretty cool, but like not as cool as seeing like the Battletoads, especially because like they've been dead for a long time, and Kratos is just been along
never dying,
never dying, just an asshole to the end of time. So that was awesome, still awesome. And then Broken Age, in terms of recent games, the second act came out. I didn't enjoy the second act as much as I did the first act. And I replayed the first act because when you buy any of the PlayStation versions, they come with the complete package. And so I replayed the first one, and it still holds up. And then the second one is good, but not as good. It kind of ends on a flat note. And there's not much new in terms of like areas and characters. It's kind of like a flip perspective. And I really don't want to give any spoilers because, you know, the game really is about the story. And except for the ending, it's still funny, it's really good, beautiful world, very inventive. The puzzles are really hard and obscure in the second act, and the momentum was like flowing amazingly well in the first one because they were cool puzzles and inventive, but also not like mind-boggling. But this one has like a lot of backtracking, and this Vita port is bad with the loads, so it makes all the backtracking that much more extensive and painful. But otherwise, as a whole, Broken Age is really cool. It really was like the first one to really kick off Kickstarter's whole business, I would say. I mean, there was stuff before, but this was like the biggest one when it really, you know, kind of made a huge craze. And I think it was well worth it. Double Fine is one of my favorite developers. They have a lot of weird, quirky stuff. And I know that you picked up something that was very obscure, and not a lot of people played it, but Lauren and I talked about the Project Crosstone was getting a sequel last episode.
Oh.
And by the by,
cool.
You happened to pick up the first one. So I didn't really go into too much about what the game was when we talked about the sequel. So why don't you tell us some impressions about the first one?
Okay, so I'm just starting out Project Crosstone. I think I'm in the 8th chapter now. Oh, what is there to say about this? It's very hard for me to come up with words to explain what this is about. I mean, other than just a random assemblage of characters across so many different companies and...
Right, you got Bandai Namco, you got Sega, and
Monolith.
Capcom.
It is more addictive than I thought it was going to be. Like, I really love the battle system. It's part strat RPG, part fighting game.
Yeah, which I think is a very unique system. Of course, this has been implemented in a lot of their like cross games. The thing that I didn't like about it, and I'm curious to what you think, is the story. Like, I like the concept of seeing all these characters together, But in
Right.
terms of an overflowing story, I don't think it's...
It's a very cheap gimmick to get everybody together.
That said, every single chapter when they introduce new people, I was just like, oh my god! Bruce Willis!
Oh god, Bruno. I was wondering when you originally said Bruce Willis was in this game, I was like, wait, what? How? But I get it. I totally get it now.
I don't know if I explained it on the last episode, but I believe it's Sega. Sega made a arcade
Die Hard
series
game.
of Die Hard stuff, and they called him like Dynamite Bruno.
Yeah.
That was his name in Japan. So it's Dynamite Bruno is in the game. So technically, Bruce Willis is in the game.
And he looks just like Bruce Willis from the original Die Hard.
Very cartoonified,
So
of course,
it is unmistakable.
The other thing that was kind of weird is that like battles take quite a long time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was much in the earlier part, but I think like throughout the battle system is cool, but like they definitely have like way too many bad guys that you have to fight against. That just makes it just a slog to get through.
They lure you in with these battles because at the beginning of some battles, I've noticed you have like say 10 guys, you whittle that down, you kill about 8 of them, and then all of a sudden, boom, you get 20 more guys dropped on you.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say the game is necessarily hard as it is just like taxing. It just like takes a long time to get through stuff. There's nothing really like it though. I mean,
No.
I'm not looking for something on the Kingdom Hearts level in terms of story, but something with just a little more oomph to it for the sequel, I should say. So yeah, well, I'm looking forward to hearing your analysis more down the road. But for now, let's just get into that news. All right, Shay, let us get into the news.
The news!
So, a lot of E3 stuff has been popping up as of late, which gets me super excited for the conference. So, before in the last episode, Lauren and I talked about that Bethesda is going to be holding a press conference.
Oh.
But not to be outdone, Square Enix is also going to be holding a separate press conference, as well as there's going to be a PC-centered press conference hosted by AMD, which is like a big PC thing or whatever. So, like, the PC one is going to include, they hinted people from, like, the Humble Bundle people, Blizzard, and all, like, the big, huge PC people. And so, I'm not really a PC guy, so I don't really want to get into speculation with that stuff. But in terms of Square Enix, for them to hold their, a conference, and they haven't done that in a long time. And so I wrote a list of games that they're probably going to show off, because they got a lot in their pot right now. So they're probably going to show off Final Fantasy 15 in some form. Probably nothing more than a trailer, because when that demo came out, they're like, it's 60% done. So that was only a couple months ago. So that game is not going to come out this year.
It's 63% done.
It's even a stretch to even imagine it coming out in 2016. I know it's really hard to imagine, but at this point, I'm just beatered and battered. Kingdom Hearts 3, they may show a trailer.
Or just more gameplay. I'd be okay with that.
Technically showed gameplay since they switched engines.
Oh, that's right. That last one was the old engine, wasn't it?
Yeah, and people are probably going to speculate that, of course we're going to see Kingdom Hearts 3. Why else would they hold a press conference? I don't think so. They have a lot more on their plate. They just announced Star Ocean 5. They'll probably show an official trailer for that. They'll probably show off gameplay in some kind of demo form for Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which was just announced. They have shown nothing off for Rise of the Tomb Raider, which was announced at E3 last year. They showed a trailer, and that's the last time they really talked about it in any kind of real capacity. I know that you mentioned before that you read a Game Informer article, but I mean, that was also a long time ago too, so we'll probably see something for that. So, what else? Just Cause 3. We watched the trailer for that, so that was the first gameplay trailer.
A lot of explosions.
A lot of explosions. Did you ever play the first, or I should say the second game?
Nope.
Okay. Well, it was really good. And the point of it was just to kind of dick around and explode things. It was like an open world where the emphasis was on exploding things. You had like a grappling hook that you could like grapple onto trees and cars, and you had like a parachute. It was just kind of like an open playground, and if that's what this game is, I'm all for it. The story was like whatever.
Oh, I get it. Just cause.
Yeah.
I thought it was more like just cause. Like you're gonna kill someone because of blah 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 blah.
Well, essentially that is more what they were leaning towards, because it's about like you going into like a country and like taking down like a dictatorship.
Oh.
And then after the second one, everyone's like, I love that game just cause, and I think they're really rolling
Just
with
'cause.
that now. So it's kind of like a play on words for both. It's a just cause
Uh-oh.
and just cause. Alright, so they also have Dragon Quest Heroes, which has been confirmed for the West. They probably won't spend a lot of time on that since it's, already been released, but they'll probably have a trailer and be like, pre-order now or something like that.
Dragon Quest 7! Come on, Square Enix, give me it!
Okay.
Give me it!
Alright, well, as long as you bring that up, I have 3 games that have already been released, but have not been confirmed for the West. So, yes, I would love to see Dragon Quest 7 appear there and be like, hey, we're finally bringing this over, we're going to publish it ourselves, and that would be awesome, because, and people were like, oh, maybe they're going to announce, the next Dragon Quest, but that's more of a Japanese thing. Final Fantasy is huge over here, Dragon Quest is big over there. If they announced Dragon Quest 11 here, I don't think that would go over well with Japan, so. Okay, so next we have Bravely Second. That just released in Japan, and reviews are pretty positive about that. So it did really well over here, so I guarantee that they'll probably announce it.
I bet.
They'll either announce it here, or Nintendo will announce it. One of the two, but I guarantee somewhere at E3 they'll talk about Bravely Second coming to America in what I hope is fall, but they'll probably want to make it a early 2016 release, probably. And then we have Final Fantasy Explorers. Have you heard of this game? So Final Fantasy Explorers is kind of like a Dragon Quest Final Fantasy game.
More like traditional
Monster Hunter, I mean.
Okay.
And you're hunting around for monsters, and it's an action RPG. And there's like guest characters like Cloud and stuff like that. And it looks really cool. I think it did pretty well in Japan. And I see no reason why they wouldn't bring it over here, because for the most part, all the Final Fantasies come over here, even the... And that is pretty much the rundown of everything that I almost guarantee that they're going to have at this press conference. Is there anything I left out, or is there any wishes that you want for them to announce? I think that's a good lineup.
Yeah.
They got a lot of Western stuff. They got a lot of, Japanese core eccentric stuff for their division, so... I think it's a good list. We watched a couple trailers. We talked about Just Cause 3 a little bit. Black Ops 3, I know you're not really into Call of Duty, but it looks like they're really going way out there in terms of like their tech thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good trailer. It was very catchy.
I think they could have a pretty neat crossover with Deus Ex.
Actually, did you know that Square Enix publishes pretty much all the Call of Duty games in Japan?
Really?
It's very weird.
This seems hand in hand.
That'd be pretty cool to see. If you watch the Deus Ex Mankind Divided trailer and then the Black Ops 3 one, they're very close in terms of like what their goal is between like the divided of humans with augmentations versus the normal humans, and they're both kind of similar areas, although this is more of a war type thing, but it looks interesting to say the least. They definitely always go balls out in terms of visuals. So the next one though is huge, just announced today via a Game Informer cover, and then quickly after that they put up a trailer, and that is Disney Infinity 3.0, which Lauren and I just talked about last episode, where we're like, it's definitely gonna be Star Wars, and look, here we are, Star Wars. So now it's confirmed, and I'm so excited. I loved covering the Marvel side last year for Disney. That was so cool. Still, in my opinion, again, I was given the review copy, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I think they are the best toys in terms of Skylanders and Amiibo. They are very well constructed. Looking forward to playing a good Star Wars game, but, with co-op in mind, that you can play with your niece or nephew or whatever. It's fun for all ages, just like, like Little Big Planet or whatever. So, I mean, they just showed like the obvious people that they're gonna have figures for, of course.
Yeah.
I definitely want to see some more obscure people, like Jar Jar Binks and
Oh no!
the Guado, Sebulba,
What about oh crap, Greedo?
Anakin as a child. You know,
Oh
core.
god,
Everyone's favorites, core Star Wars people.
Luke,
Boss
Leia,
Nass.
Boss Nass, Jabba the Hutt,
Jabba the Hutt. That'd be pretty cool.
that shoulder monster.
No, but for real, Boba Fett for sure. They'll make that one.
Oh
That'll
yeah,
be
you know there's
amazing.
gonna be the Fed.
Yeah, the Fett and his Fett. So yeah, looking forward to that. So did you hear about these Steam Paint mods for Skyrim on Halo? Did you hear about those?
No.
Okay. Here's a little story for you. So, there are mods for PC games, and they have been free since then because, you can't really make money off of someone else's game. We're just, like, making a mod for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, Steam decided to release paid mods, starting with Skyrim. People exploded over this. The comments were very negative, and shortly after they launched, they took down the paid mods a week later. So...
Oh god.
Yeah, so it was a huge debacle. They said, based off feedback, we did bad. Sorry, we thought it was a good idea to, They had a good idea in mind where they wanted to have the opportunity for modders to work on mods for a job so they can get paid for it. That is a kind of a cool incentive. But yeah, so it was a cool idea, but obviously it just backfired. I understand their sentiments, but still, having mods, those things have existed for a long time and non-paid for, and to have introduced this thing where you had to pay for them was just kind of weird. Making some kind of tip jar would have been maybe okay or whatever, but yeah, just a debacle. Hey everybody, it's your host the most, it's Tristan. Are you liking the show so far? I really, really hope you are. I can't stress this enough, I really want to hear feedback. So drop me a line on YouTube or on my Examiner page, anywhere you feel like it. Let me know what you like about the show, what you don't like, what you want to see added. And of course, if you want to support me, you can always subscribe to the YouTube channel, as well as follow my writing on Examiner.com. That's EXAMINER, Examiner.com. It's the place to go for everything you want to know. Check it out. Now, back to the show. Shay, let's talk about Konami.
Konami.
So, I want to do a little retrospective on them. Because they are...
Not doing so good.
If you thought the Steam paid mod was like a weird debacle, Konami is even going crazier. So first of all, about a month ago, it was let out that Hideo Kojima was leaving the company. And then Konami decided to take off his name from all of the advertising for Metal Gear Solid 5, which is really crazy because why would you do that?
Shit.
That's like someone sleeping with somebody else's wife kind of levels of weird. And then they're like, we're going to take down PT, which was the Silent Hills demo from PlayStation. And then shortly after that, they announced that Silent Hills is canceled. Huge campaign. It was amazing. It was a lot of people's favorite, even though it was a demo for Silent Hills, it was one of people's favorite experiences from last year. So to do that, I mean, I can understand why. It was a collaboration between Guillermo del Toro and Hideo Kojima, and if Kojima is out, then obviously the thing would kind of fall flat, even though they could hire him. I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff happening. So, they took down, Silent Hills is no more, they took down PT, and at first they're like, hey, we're taking this down, but if you already, downloaded it and deleted it, you could, re-download it. And that happened when they took it down April 30th, some companies were like, okay, we tested this out, and we deleted it, and we could re-download it, so it still works. Today, they tried it again, and it seems that you can't even re-download it, even though if you download it. So they took it off completely. So Konami is going crazy. Also, in lieu of all this, like, destroying of properties, they announced the Metal Gear Solid 1984 collection. They teased that with, like, a logo, and people were like, what's this gonna be? What's this gonna be? It's gonna be a clothing line. So...
Oh, God.
It was very weird news. I'm all for getting some kind of, like, weird shirts, but that is a weird thing to be like, hey, we canceled all these things, but hey, we got some shirts coming to you because Metal Gear is the last thing we have to hold on to. So they pretty much killed off all of the franchises, and I want to go into basically some of the top ones that they hold and talk about their first release and their last release and where we want them to go, because Konami, they started off in 1969 as Jukebox Rental Repair Company. So, and basically now they're huge in the slot machines in Japan, the Ponki.
Oh, yeah.
Pachinko. That does great business for them. They have a lot of subsidiaries as well. It's said that the head of the company just doesn't like their video game division. It's like, why are we spending all this money when we're making more on this or whatever? So, I mean, that just points out why some of these franchises probably died, because, you know, except for Kojima, I think he was the last person, like, really pushing them to make great games and stuff like that. So, they're probably going to go under in terms of, like, the games. They might sell the properties. I don't know, though. I think they are doing bad, but they're doing good in some other areas. So, so let's start off with Castlevania, which was released in 1986 on the Nintendo. Tons and tons of sequels. For a very long time, it's constant sequels. My favorite were the GBA games. Just awesome exploration, the Metroidvania type games. Symphony of the Night was great on the PlayStation. Amazing. And then that kind of died out, and they decided to go 3D, like the PS2 and stuff like that. And so the last game to come out was Lords of Shadow 2, which was last year for the PS3, 360, and PC. And that did not do well because it was a crap game. So that probably was the final showing for Castlevania, even though they could sell so many copies if they just like went back to the roots and did the whole Metroidvania type exploration type things, because that gets people going. Nintendo has the same thing. They haven't released a new Metroid in a long time, and indie games have been doing it for them. Rogue Legacy was basically kind of like a Metroidvania. That was amazing. Axiom Verge just came out this year. Also amazing. So people are hungry for Metroidvanias. And if we can't have the real thing from Castlevania or Metroid, the next best thing is a weird indie game. But yeah, I think somebody in the IndieCade universe would love to actually have the rights to Castlevania to make like a new one. I think that'd be pretty cool. In terms of like an actual company that might be able to do it, I don't know. I think Nintendo could, because they had a great relationship for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
But if they're not even willing to make Metroid, then they probably won't even want to make Castlevania either. So, but moving on, we have Contra. Now, this series started in 1987 for the arcades, and again, another series that was just constant, and then kind of died off, and then was revived for the PS2. Then after that was dead, and then the last game to come out was a game called Hardcore Uprising, which was a downloadable game for the Xbox 360 and PSN, and it came out in 2011, so it hasn't seen a new game in quite a while. You know, in a world humbled by Bloodborne and the Dark Souls series, people like a good hardcore game that is very, very hard. I have a special place in my heart for Contra, just that I played a lot of the original on the Nintendo at, you know, friends' houses, families and stuff like that. Played a little bit on the Super Nintendo. I never really got into the Contra series that much, but I do respect it for, you know, what it is. I do think it would be cool if it came back in some respect. Not high on my list, though, I should say. Well, moving on, a series that is very obscure to America because not a lot of games came out over here, but it thrived in Japan, and that would be the Ganbare Goemon games. This series started off as Mr. Goemon for the arcade in 1986. The last game to come out in this series, technically, is called Ganbare Goemon Pachitsuro 2. It's a pachinko game. Basically, our first game that came over to America was Mystical Ninja. Then I believe we got the 64 game, and I think we got a couple others, but there were like 3 or 4 for the Super Nintendo, and they're all really cool games. They're just like action RPGs, and they're very quirky, and they have like amazing pixel art, especially the Super Nintendo games. Those like 4 really are like what I really want to come over here, but there are a lot of other spin-off stuff that I think would be pretty cool, just to even see on like Virtual Console of some sort. I don't know, I understand why it didn't work over here, because Goemon is based off of a historical character. The entire series is taking place in a lot of Japanese. It takes all in Japan and lore and stuff like that, and sometimes doesn't translate over well. But I think in a world where Persona is like king now and people love Japan and are with anime and stuff like that, they're probably more used to.
It's not as obscure anymore as it used to be. We just need somebody to bridge the gap and say, you know what? Let's take all those old Goemon games and let's package them in one collection.
And bring them to America for the first time ever.
Yeah.
That would be huge. Next we have Metal Gear, and I don't think that's really in any kind of trouble post Metal Gear Solid 5, because they said they're going to make more games, but I very much doubt it. But I don't really even want them to touch Metal Gear after Kojima leaves, because this is like the one series that has had the same director on it since the very beginning, since 1987.
And I'd say this is kind of his brainchild, isn't it?
This is his baby, yes. Some of the spin-offs haven't had his direct, like he hasn't directed them.
Rising.
Yeah, and that was like a Platinum one or whatever. So, and a couple of the other spin-offs, but he's directed most of them, and at least had a hand in producing everything. So
yeah,
I don't really want to get into that again, because that's not in so much danger in terms of stuff. But Silent Hills is. And, that one started off on the PS1 in 1999. Again, I talked about it last time, but the last...
real revolutionary game for its time.
The last official one was the PT demo, which turned out to be actually a teaser for Silent Hills. And that was technically the last Silent Hill game to come out. That was like a huge thing for the survival horror genre. And then Silent Hills came out and was kind of like more of a really crazy psychological kind of horror thing. And I think 2 is probably the height of the series. Everyone loves and always goes back to how 2 is so amazing. And I think 1 through 4 are really cool. I think it kind of lost its edge after that, but they try, and I think PT was the right direction for it, and people seem to like it, but then they're just like, we're off. I think it was just like pretty much Kojima leaving. Next, we have Suikoden. That one started off on the PS1 in 1995. The last game to come out was Genso. This is very Japanese. I will try though. Genso Suikoden Sumogoreshi Hayukunen no Toki. That was for the PSP in 2012. And that was only released in Japan. I think a lot of people would say 2 and 3 are probably the best in series, and 4 and 5 are kind of weird in between, and they're very...
Wasn't 5 really obscure? It was like on boats and stuff?
4 was on boats. They probably continued it on with 5 as well, but yeah, I can see how they lost their their direction. Again, this is probably during the PS2 era when Konami was kind of, what are we going to do about all these, games that we have? It's kind of sad. I would love to see it, because, those games started off such a crazy idea. I mean, going around collecting
108 characters.
Technically, I guess 107, since you are one of the stars or whatever, but still having 108 party members is great, even though you don't control all of them. Like, some of them are, part of your keep or whatever. But it's a very unique idea for an RPG, and they play really well. The pixel art is great. I just finished 2 not so long ago, probably in the beginning of when I started Examiner Gamer Podcast. And of course, kind of to get into a little bit of a tangent with like Hideo Kojima, I think he was kind of pinned down with a lot of their stuff, because he kept on saying for a long time since Metal Gear Solid 2 that, this is my last one. The next one was his last one. And I think that's pretty much because Konami saw how well it sold, and they were just like, you need to make us another one. And he was probably pressured into doing that. Even though he wanted to make stuff like Zone of the Enders, and when they announced the HD collection in 2012, or I think it was 2011, it came out in 2012. But when that was coming out, they showed off official artwork for Zone of the Enders 3 and said it was coming. And then a year later it was canceled, probably because Konami was like, no, you're not making that, you're making Metal Gear. And in that same essence, I think he's like, alright, but I'm going to use every penny I can, and you're not going to question me. And for the longest time, I don't think anybody did. And then this one, I think maybe it was Kiefer Sutherland or something else, or just, it taking so long. But I think someone at Konami was finally like, all right, this is enough. Or something snapped in Kojima and just was like, yeah, it's time for me to quit. I got all these games I want to make, and I'm not going to be able to make them here, so F all y'all. And then he walked out. And now that he's free, I think he could probably make spiritual successors with. He can make spiritual successors to a lot of his games, like Police Knots and Snatcher and Boktai and Zone of the Enders and some form of Metal Gear eventually down the line. But he is one of those auteurs that we have very rare of in video games, and and that's about it. Is there anything that I'm kind of missing out on that you really want to see come back? I mean, for a long time, I guess, you know what? Technically, they do own the rights to Bomberman, because I think in 2000...
They absorbed Hudson Soft, which owns Bomberman, which created the game.
Right. And
Konami absorbed them because they were doing real horrible, and now Bomberman's gonna go off into obscurity like it's always been, except for this one fan.
There's a lot of fans. A lot of my friends love Bomberman, and I could not get into Bomberman at all. I don't know. I kind of don't...
Except for that very strange game for the Xbox 360.
Bomberman Zero?
Oh my god! And that game is almost Dark Souls punishing.
I think that was their attempt to make like an action game, because everything else it's pretty much more of like a puzzle kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bomberman could have really worked if it was like a platformer, and I know they kind of tried some of that stuff, but it's mostly, again, puzzle stuff, so...
I always my first experience with it was Bomberman Hero, which is in itself just an obscure game. I like the adventure aspect of Bomberman. Those couple that I had for the GameCube were really fun because you had like an adventure-ish kind of game, but then you also, the multiplayer was the traditional Bomberman.
I did see that they absorbed in 2012, but I was like, opening up Hudson would be like another huge podcast for us to talk about. But I will say the one series that, if I could pick one series from Hudson that I want to see come back, is Adventure Island. I love those games as a kid. I loved Adventure Island 1, 2, and 3. I went to those things all the time from a local rental store. So cool, so weird. Just nice little platformers. So yeah, I think I'll, do kind of a bigger retrospective on some more obscure titles from both Hudson and Konami later on, but these are the immediate ones that I want brought back in some form or another. So a funny thing happened. Shay and I kind of decided that we didn't want to do an extra life because of how long everything took. And then as I kind of was editing this thing together, I found out that I actually took a lot of things out because we kind of ranted quite a bit. Nothing in terms of bloopers, so I couldn't really think of anything. And then it kind of dawned on me, hey, we had just spent the weekend celebrating two of our very good friends' weddings. You know one of them, of course, the co-host of the Misadventures of Team Sexy Pats podcast, Matilda. She got married. Congratulations again to her and her wonderful husband. And so that means hopefully we'll be getting together soon to make some more episodes of Tamupst. And to those who don't know, it's a comedy sex podcast. You should check it out. It's linked. It's one of my channels. It's very obscure but very, very funny. We can just let our freak flow fly. The other thing that really got me riled up and very excited was, and this was like out of nowhere, Tronbon, or the Misadventures of Tronbon, speaking of another sexy lady with with misadventures, that was stealth released on PSN this past week. Now, to those that don't know, that is one of the rarest PS1 games of all time. That, along with the main series, which is Mega Man Legends 1 and 2, yes, Tronbon is a prequel to those games. So, seeing that come out on PSN compared to like $200 to $500 on like eBay or whatever, instead, you're paying $6, I recommend you do it. Just so that we can have hope that they will re-release, that they will re-release Mega Man Legends 1 and 2 on PSN for the love of the Monkey King and all of heaven, that is all that I have been wanting for so long. If you're not going to bring Mega Man back in any kind of new form, please bring Mega Man back in all of his old forms. Let me pay you, Capcom. Speaking of Japanese companies, just give me the things that are old. If you want some kind of funding to make new things, Konami, you do the same thing. Just give me the things. Give me all of my nostalgia on one complete package, please. Ugh. And that has been the Examiner Gamer Podcast. Thank you again for joining me. Shay actually had to step out and we lost a little bit of audio, but this is me saying goodbye instead. He wishes you all a very fond, nerdy farewell. Of course, you can find me at the usual places on Examiner, read my articles, subscribe to this YouTube channel to watch all my crazy videos, and get some more podcasts. Check out The Misadventures of Team Sexy Pants if you haven't done that already. What else am I doing? Buy some albums of the podcast. And I recently put up some extra stuff for Tomops as well as my cartoon audio commentaries. I do so much for all of you, and I ask for little in return besides your loving adoration. So, until next time, until some video game stuff happens and I get riled up, and I make a panel for people to talk about said stuff, and I have some ideas, and I have some things to talk about. Hopefully next time maybe I can talk about The Witcher. Crossing my fingers. Alright, well that's been me. So, see you next time on the Examiner Gamer Podcast.
Boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom.